In a dusty trailer in the middle of nowhere, two sisters perform a ritual from the internet to change their fate. They aren't trying to summon a demon, they're sending a signal. The thing that answers isn't evil, it's just a program, and its only function is to delete the problem. The sound of a beat-up truck engine sputtering to a halt broke the evening quiet, followed by the slam of a door. Unsteady footsteps crunched on the gravel outside, coming closer. The door to the mobile home was yanked open with a violent shudder. "I'm home." Rick's voice boomed through the small space, thick with the smell of cheap beer and the day's frustration. Lexi, curled on the threadbare couch, flinched as if struck. She quickly fumbled for the remote, silencing the old television. At the small kitchen table, her younger sister Maya looked up from her phone. Her face was a blank slate, her eyes as cold and unfeeling as marbles. Rick stumbled in, his heavy boots scuffing the linoleum. "Why's it so quiet?" he slurred, his eyes scanning the room with suspicion. "You two pulling some kinda stunt behind my back?" He squinted at the dark TV screen, then at Lexi. "You watchin' this garbage all day? Power bill's high this month, don't you be lookin' at me." I just turned it on," Lexi whispered, her voice barely audible. She tried to make herself smaller, to melt into the stained cushions of the couch. "Just turned it on." Rick let out a dry, humorless laugh that was more of a bark. He lurched forward. His hand shot out and gripped Lexi's wrist, his calloused fingers digging into her skin. "You think I'm stupid? I know what you two get up to when I'm gone." His grip tightened, not enough to leave a definite bruise, but just enough to plant the seed of fear, a familiar, chilling promise. "Next time, think twice." He released her as suddenly as he had grabbed her, leaving a blotchy red mark on her thin wrist. He moved to the fridge, yanked it open, swore at the emptiness inside, and slammed it shut with a force that rattled the dishes in the sink. "I'm going out," he announced to no one in particular. "Don't bother me." The door slammed again. The truck engine roared back to life and faded into the distance, leaving a tense, heavy silence in its wake. Lexi rubbed her wrist, the skin tender and hot. Maya was still at the table, watching her. For a fleeting second, Lexi saw something flash in her sister's eyes, not sympathy, not concern, but a cold, hard calculation. "Tonight," Maya said, her voice soft but firm, cutting through the silence. "Tonight, we do it." Later, as darkness fully consumed the desert landscape, the true silence began. "He won't like it," Lexi whispered, her voice a ghost in the dim trailer. "He doesn't like anything we do anyway, so what's the difference?" Maya's reply was unervingly steady, devoid of the fear that was making Lexi's own heart hammer against her ribs. "Come on, Maya. You know I don't like being in the dark, especially when the wind's howling through the cracks in this old place. It sounds like someone's dragging their nails down the siding." Lexi shivered, hugging herself tightly. Every creak and groan of the metal box felt like a prelude to disaster. "Stop your whining, Lexi, or I'll tell Rick you were cussing." Maya said it as she turned on the screen of the first phone. A sudden slab of cold, blue light sliced through the room, painting long, grotesque shadows on the walls. It illuminated Lexi's watery eyes, making them shine like shattered glass at the bottom of a well. Crying on command was a gift Lexi had perfected over the years, a defense mechanism against a world that was too harsh. But it was a trick that never worked on her sister. "You know that doesn't work on me," Lexi said, her voice trembling slightly. "Now stop being a wimp and hand me the other phone." Lexi pursed her lips, crossing her arms over her slender chest in a gesture of mock defiance. But it was a hollow act. Inside, a storm of fear and desperation was raging. She glanced at the red mark on her wrist, now fading to a dull purple. She thought of the community college scholarship, her only escape, her one flickering ember of hope in a world of darkness. Then she looked at Maya, At the iron resolve in her sister's young face, and the terror of being left behind in this hellscape was even greater than her fear of the unknown. With a sigh of resignation, she passed her phone to Maya. The two sisters only had each other. It was a mantra, a curse they whispered to themselves in the dead of night. Growing up here, in a rusting metal box in the middle of the Nevada desert, taught them fast and young to survive, to rely on nothing and no one but each other. "Get your talking out now, Lexi," Maya instructed, her tone that of a high priestess preparing a sacred rite. "Once we start, we have to be completely silent if we want this to work." She took the phone from Lexi, placing it carefully on the floor and completing a circle of 6 old, mismatched devices. I just hope this actually works," Lexi confessed. "That scholarship, it's all I have, Maya." "Hope is for people who have time to wait," Maya replied, her focus entirely on the arrangement of the phones. "We don't have time. We need a cheat code." Aunt Helen was right about that, even if she didn't realize it. Aunt Helen was just drunk, Lexi argued weakly. She was talking about cosmic energy and internet nonsense. "It's not nonsense." Maya finally looked up, and the pooled light from the phone screens made her eyes seem like dark, bottomless pits. "She opened a door for me, Lexi. I went looking. I went to places on the internet she'd never dare to go. A forum. Black background, green text. They don't talk about energy. They talk about source code. They say reality is just a programmable script." A chill that had nothing to do with the night air traced its way down Lexi's spine. "That sounds insane." "Living here is what's insane," Maya shot back. She tapped the screen of the final phone. Instantly, a multi-layered, hissing static filled the room. Each phone emitted a different frequency of white noise, creating a discordant, electronic choir that grated on the nerves. The glitchy, strobing light cast eerie, dancing shadows on their frightened, still childlike faces. "The world runs on different rules, Lexi," Maya said, her voice rising slightly to be heard over the noise. "We just have to know how to exploit them." Maya placed a can of Monster Energy and a bag of flaming hot chips in the center of the circle. A modern offering for a digital deity. Lexi stared at the cheap junk food, and her stomach churned with a mixture of hunger and dread. "Ready to go offline?" Maya whispered, her voice nearly lost in the cacophony. "What?" Lexi asked, leaning forward. "The signal ritual," Maya repeated. "Are we ready to go silent?" "Oh." Lexi could no longer hold back her tears. They welled up and spilled over, tracing clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. "Maya. I'm scared." "What's with you?" Maya's voice was sharp. "You act like you weren't the one getting all excited when I showed you the forum, going, 'What's next? What's next?' I thought you wanted to do this too." Then her expression softened, a calculated shift. "Please don't leave me, Lexi. I can't stand to be here all by myself. Rick is barely ever even home and I'll starve. That's what. If you leave, I'll starve. Now how would you like that?" It was a familiar performance, weakness weaponized into a shield. But this time, Lexi could hear a genuine thread of terror in her sister's voice that gave her pause. Maya wasn't just acting, she was truly afraid of being alone. Maya must have seen the change in Lexi's face, because a dry laugh escaped her lips. "Oh, Lexi. I told you I'd take you with me. Do you think this entity that can bend reality would be so cold-hearted that it wouldn't help my sister too? That's the whole point, silly." She stood and wrapped her arms around Lexi in a fierce hug. "Shhh," she whispered into Lexi's tangled hair. "The person on the forum, the one who calls themselves Auntie, said that if we do this right, it will appear. It will bend things, get you that scholarship, and get us out of here." They separated. The ritual began. They sat opposite each other, enclosed in their circle of strobing light and roaring sound. At Maya's signal, Lexi, trembling, placed a paper plate in front of herself, then one for Maya, and finally, one for the empty chair that was set backwards, facing away from them. They ate and drank in a silence that was anything but peaceful, a quiet island in a sea of static. They kept their eyes down, never looking at each other, never looking at the empty chair. The presence of the empty chair was a palpable thing, a void that sucked in all thought and courage. Lexi could hear her own heart thudding in her ears, a frantic drum beat against the symphony of noise. She thought of her unfinished scholarship essay, of the faces of the other kids at school, kids with real houses, real parents. Then she thought of Maya, her strange, terrifying, brilliant little sister, sitting there as if she were born to commune with unseen forces. Time stretched and warped. The chips were gone. The energy drinks were half empty. Maya looked up, her dark eyes locking with Lexi's. It was time. Solemnly, they raised their cans of Monster, the lurid green liquid glowing in the chaotic light. The pressure in the room was immense. Without breaking eye contact, they brought the cans to their lips and let the sickly sweet, chemical liquid burn down their throats. As their cans touched the floor in unison, something happened. The screens on the phones all sputtered and died. At once. The roar of static was gone. The silence that rushed in to fill the void was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket. Darkness, total and profound, consumed them. Maya squeezed her eyes shut and began to shake. A violent pressure built in Lexi's ears, a deep, painful sensation as if she were being crushed by the weight of the ocean. She felt like her head would pop. She clapped her hands over her ears, but the pressure was coming from inside, from the very core of her being. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Lexi opened her eyes to a thick, impenetrable blackness. She couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. A loud, splintering bang shook the entire trailer, followed by the tinkling music of shattering glass. The front door had been kicked open. Lexi screamed, a sound that was swallowed by the oppressive darkness. She scrambled towards where she thought Maya was, her hands flailing until they found her sister's thin, trembling arm. Her eyes were beginning to adjust, and she could make out the faint silhouette of Maya, still with her eyes clenched shut, hands over her ears, rocking back and forth violently. Maya! Maya! Are you okay? Maya's eyes flew open. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice trembling. For what? Lexi asked, shaking her sister gently. She felt a cold draft from the open doorway. And in that draft, she saw movement. A silhouette standing in the threshold. It was the size of a man, but it was a void, a hole in the fabric of the night. It's here, Lexi breathed, her voice a mixture of terror and awe. But then, a familiar, rancid smell hit her nostrils. Stale beer and cigarettes. What the hell is all this? Rick's voice bellowed from the doorway. He stumbled in. Where's the power? What are you two doing now? Rick. Lexi was stunned. You're back. Course I'm back, it's my damn house. He roared. He fumbled his way forward, and as he got closer, Lexi could see his bloodshot eyes gleaming in the faint moonlight. He was drunker than she'd ever seen him. What is all this devilry? I told you to. Lexi pulled Maya behind her, trying to shield her. But when she looked down at her sister's face, she froze. A vicious, triumphant sneer was spreading across her lips. Maya! Get away from us! Maya shrieked. The sound was not that of a child. It was piercing, sharp, and filled with a venomous hate that made Rick stumble back a step. His shock quickly evaporated, replaced by pure rage. You dare yell at me, you little bitch! He snarled, lurching towards them. A hand, long and unnatural, slipped over Rick's shoulder like a lover's invitation from the grave. Lexi watched as Rick froze, his body going rigid. He turned his head slowly, so slowly, his drunken movements becoming thick and syrupy. His mouth hung open in a comical O as his eyes widened in horror at the thing gripping his shoulder. It wasn't a hand. It looked like a cluster of dead pixels, a glitch in the very air, its fingers stretching and vibrating as if they didn't belong in this reality. Rick tried to scream, but the sound was trapped in his throat, choked off by pure terror. A face materialized behind his head. The entity was a head taller than him, its body flickering and humming like a bad TV signal. It had no eyes, only holes of swirling, roaring static. No mouth, no nose, just those hungry, blank voids, which emitted a low-frequency hum that Lexi could feel vibrating in her bones. Lexi whimpered, a helpless animal watching a predator. She saw the entity slip its second hand around Rick's other shoulder and pull. There was no blood. There was no sound of tearing flesh or breaking bone. Instead, Rick's body began to disintegrate. Piece by piece, he dissolved into millions of gray pixels, like a corrupted image file being deleted. His choked gurgle distorted into a series of electronic glitches, a final, quiet hiss of static, and then he was simply gone. The space where Rick had stood was now empty. The entity flickered for a moment longer, then receded into the darkness and vanished. The trailer was silent again, save for the howling wind outside. "Don't be mad, Lexi." Lexi looked down at the timid little voice and saw her sister looking up at her with a sheepish, innocent smile. That smile, on that once familiar face, was now the most terrifying thing in the world. "I called it," Maya said. "What?" Lexi sputtered, her body shaking uncontrollably. "I was afraid, Lexi. I didn't want you to go to college. I didn't want you to leave me," Maya said, her voice small and confessional, as if explaining why she'd broken a toy. "So I thought, if we could just be rid of Rick, things would be better. You won't need that scholarship now. You won't need to leave. You'll stay with me." Lexi began to weep, not with the controllable tears of her old self, but with the racking sobs of someone whose world had just ended. Her prison hadn't vanished. It had just been rebuilt, with stronger, invisible walls, and her own sister was the warden. Maya stood up, her face a mask of calm. She walked to the corner and found the broom. She began sweeping up the broken glass from the door, the shattered pieces of their old world. And while the broom scraped away the damage, Lexi wrapped her arms around herself and curled up on the dirty floor. She listened to her sister humming a tune. A cheerful, upbeat, trending TikTok tune. It was the same one Auntie had used as the background music for her video tutorial.